Welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about 3 crucial mistakes that some people do, and yeah, I think PvP in general could be a bit more satisfying if people utilize their potential to the fullest, and that's basically what this video is aiming for and shall serve as the introduction to my job guide series for PvP. But yeah, before starting this, I think we should talk about some basic and general ideas that kinda work for all jobs in the same way, or at least in a very similar way, that I don't have to talk about this in particular in each of the videos, and yeah, you have a general strategy how you can solve certain problems that will appear in PvP combat. So the first mistake that I see many people doing, even in Crystal and Diamond, is using and utilizing your defensive and recovery kit properly. That means including all the abilities like Guard, Purify, Recuperate, and the standard issue elixir, as well as the potion you can see on the battlefield, that these little potion marks that you can see on the field, which have a requirement to be obtained or to be used that you have taken damage. And that's a crucial thing to know, because when you're hunting down enemies, sometimes they hit you and you can steal the potion from them. So for example, if I, as a Dragoon, I am very flexible, I'm very good with movement, I can just take damage from any form of participation in combat, or even from the enemy that I hunt, because they just still want to keep their uptime, not focus on keeping them alive. I can just steal them by just back jumping on top of them, or sprinting when they just want to do some defensive stuff. And you just steal the potion, which is very, very good thing to do, and some battle plan that you should focus on. On the other hand, if you are the one being hunted, make sure that you're not hitting your target if your target is still having the 100% HP, because then with 100% HP, the enemy can steal the potion from you. That's very, very, very important. Please remember that. The next thing, of course, is the basic kit Recuperate, which heals you up significantly. And even though it might counter some very, very high damage numbers, I think if burst is timed correctly and properly, you can utilize this to be healed. Except, yeah, you have a healer that also supports this effort and heals you on top of that, and maybe you have some defensive running like Horrid Roar that reduces incoming damage significantly, for example. But yeah, of course, as you can use Guard, while using Guard, you can't use any other ability, so you just use Guard and kinda sustain Guard by not clicking anything at that moment. And yeah, when talking about Guard, this leads us to the most crucial strategy on Guard that you should always be aware of. This will keep you safe for 5 seconds, but not all the time, because there are certain abilities that can either remove Guard or can just damage you through the Guard, like some Machinist abilities can. But yeah, the keenest move that you can do for Guard to catch your enemies off guard, so to say, is that you do something right before the duration ends. Because sometimes people are not tracking the animation of the Guard effect, the shield barrier, but they're tracking the duration, and they know, hey, okay, the dude is safe for 5 or 2 seconds, so we have to change targets or anything like that. Or just normally sprinting away, which is also an action that will cancel Guard, but yeah, gives you some headroom to escape dangerous situations. So what you do is you just do whatever helps you to survive on the 4-second mark. So you're not waiting the whole duration, but you're doing something on the 4-second mark to be able to, avoid being killed. And that's kind of crucial. That saved me many times, because people are not expecting you to cancel Guard early off, because sometimes they're just tracking the 5-second duration and they think like, hey, okay, they will utilize the full potential, full duration of Guard, which is not always the case. So keep that in mind. That's another very good tip to keep you alive and survive very, very big threats incoming. All right, so the next thing is Purify. Purify basically keeps you out of all the stuns, or removes all the stuns and all the silence and half sleep, sleep, and deep freeze effects. But there's one exception, which is the White Mage's transformation effect. That cannot be purified, that cannot be removed by any spell. This is basically the go-to kill command. When you use this on targets and your team realizes, oh, there's somebody being transformed, that's the set for the kill. I do this very, very often. I just throw in all the stuff I have, because chances are very high that people are joining this cause and join you with the damaging efforts, and the enemy doesn't have anything to throw against, because it's a 3-second crowd control that works very, very nice to kill people. And yeah, you can remove that. You can't heal during this situation. The only thing that might help you to survive is when you survive the transformation itself and then just use guard afterwards and still have maybe 5,000 or 6,000 HP left at least. Because when you have 2,000 or 3,000 HP left and you use guard, as most of the times the engine will not realize guard being used before an enemy has used effects that will hit you just before the guard is realized by the engine. So guard is very, very tricky. It's sloppy. The engine is not the fastest. We know that. So be aware of these facts when you use them. Okay, that leads us to the second, or the third part of this mistake, which is the standard issue elixir. You have to use this to get your resources back. So try to find cover, try to get in line of sight or out of line of sight of your enemies so they can't interrupt this process. And yeah, of course, this also means the opposite side of the coin. If you see somebody using the standard issue elixir, maybe try to just interrupt that, because it can decline the recovery of resources for your enemy, and that can be a game-changing aspect. So make sure to use this. Okay, so the second mistake is actually not as complex as the first, which leads us to the sprint mechanic or sprint ability, which has been redesigned in PvP in 6.1 and now is a toggle sprint. That means you don't have a cooldown that you use that is ready at after 20 seconds again, and you can just use that to be more quickly in your movement, but it's a toggle, which means every time you're using anything else, I think even OGCDs, yeah, even OGCDs turn off this toggle. So you're moving quickly with sprint, but every time you use something, it turns off and cancels the effect. That means sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you're just spamming your combo, for example, but the enemy is trying to disengage from combat and is faster than you because the enemy is full focus on doing sprint and disengaging abilities, defensive stuff. What you need to do now, after each attack you do, you just re-toggle on the sprint, because it's an OGCD, you can do that. So you basically just perform any action, then you use your sprint, then you perform another action and re-toggle the sprint again. That's so crucial, and I see so many people struggling with that, basically forming the main reason why you can catch up to some people, because they simply don't know that. Sometimes even just not using anything in between, like the normal thrust combo, for example, on the Dragoon, which is not that powerful and I think is not able to set the kill for certain aspects. And you just use your sprint and wait for your big attacks to recover and reduce their or finish their cooldown again. Like if you have elusive jump ready and then you use the Wormman thrust, that is a lot more damage, or the combo of Gearskogul and Nastron afterwards. So that's where you should actually wait and keep your sprint active so that the enemy doesn't have the advantage in movement speed over you. And yeah, that's super simple, but it's super crucial when you're not sticking with this. So every time you use something and movement is really required to have you being flexible or to chase down enemies, make sure that your sprint is toggled. For the third example, I want to check out with you this game together, and I will just leave it played in the background, and want to talk about the biggest mistake that we did and some misconceptions that some people have when just starting the first encounter into each match. Because the first encounter actually doesn't matter anything. Because if you're able, or if the enemy team is able to stabilize when they have been defeated completely, they actually can fight out an advantage over you if you don't stick to usual ABC of PvP, which means you have to stick with your group, or if you don't, set up very, very important kills and not getting killed by yourself. That's kind of the optimal way of how you can handle this setup, because sometimes people are just trying to disengage, and if they can recover, you haven't earned anything. And that's why you want to set the kill sometimes, want to follow people into their camp, kill them there, and try to disengage afterwards. Because every time you kill a target, when other targets are already dead, you set the difference between time of their uptime and then their time being active to a higher value. That means if somebody is dead and the other person is just recovered or just returned to the battlefield, they are in a number disadvantage compared to your team. That you should play off in the best way of, engaging, being there, standing on the front door of your enemy and pushing the crystal or trying to kill targets. And that's the biggest mistake that some people do. Yes, regrouping might be a meme and some people are just spamming this mindlessly without actually thinking about it or just without sticking to it by themselves. But it's essential. Sometimes it's more essential to regroup properly and then counter the enemy, and that actually gives you the victory or gives you access to the victory, than just having the push crystal advantage, because it can change in a blink of an eye that you have the disadvantage first, and then people have recovered and have regrouped properly and make themselves ready for a kill onto your team members and your party in general, which then can turn the tides in seconds. So you have lost the match, even though you were in a big advantage before. So always think about regrouping, which is essential and which is important. And whenever you are in the advantage and push the crystal and still have the full group remaining, be aware of what is coming. Check out the enemy team, what jobs they have, what crowd control they could throw at you at the first blink of engagement again. Or what you could do to stop that. For example, being a warrior, you can just straight up jump in there and stun some targets so that they don't have the momentum of engagement on their side. So you just surprise them with the ambush, for example. Or as a white mage, you can just blow your limit break into them to stun them, or you can crowd control the enemy white mage so that the enemy white mage can't do the same, for example. Or basically try to pin down the enemy team in that way that they would do the same to you, or especially that you focus on those targets that could really harm your party as a whole and very quickly. Like a Dragoon, for example, that could just use the limit break. Be ready to just disengage, split up, which is the most effective way of handling the Dragoon's limit break, just splitting up and everything is gone. Or just using guard, but then, your guard is gone. So splitting up, I think, is the best way to handle the Dragoon's limit break. So or red mages that can throw in the silence in a straight line to your party, which is very, very effective and can be super dangerous for you to survive, because when afterwards very quick burst is happening, you might be dying. So maybe just crowd control the red mage or focus down the red mage first. Try to set some targets with your party. That's also another mistake I don't want to open up as a part in particular, but use these targeting functions that can help you really, really nicely in climbing the ladders, climbing the rankings, because if you at least communicate with these aspects onto one target that all people stick to, it helps a lot to kill targets, and that's essential. It doesn't mean anything to be the highest damage there if nobody is dying. You haven't succeeded with anything if you have the highest damage, but not a single target has been dead in your enemy team. So that's my 5 cents or 2 cents or whatever, how many cents you might like on these basics. And of course I could talk about this for hours, I guess. There are so many little details I think you can only get into when we're talking about the jobs in particular. If you join me live, I can answer you any questions. We can talk about very heavy fine-tuning or detailed theory crafting of how to kill targets, how to survive and all that stuff. But I think for this kind of video, this is the limit we can make it. So thank you for watching. I hope this is helpful to get started and to get rid of these kind of mistakes. I think the sprint one could be one of the most important things that are so easy to do right, but you just have to know about it. So I hope that these are helpful to you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for checking out this video. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay queued for PvP, of course, and keep loving Final Fantasy.